Welcome to the Scholars Chair, produced by Read One Communications. Producer and editor Khalil Shadid. Our focus is on an article written by Masard Mahmoud Qureshi and Saeed Maksud Ali Shah. Our topic is the role of Islamic thought in the resolution of the present crisis of science and technology. When asked to prepare poisons, Reza, the great Muslim scientist of the 19th century AC, is reported to reply with a firm refusal, even though it was quite capable of doing so, because it was against his religious conviction. The incident is not a causal one, but highlights the fundamental difference in two opposing approaches to science and technology. One, consciously based on directing science and technology to service humanity, with due regard to social values and ecological balance, and the other, professedly value neutral, yet leading, among other things, to unprecedented damage to man's social, moral, psychological, economic, and environmental systems. The second approach has emerged with full vigor since the Industrial Revolution. Perhaps scientists' bitter confrontation with the Church at its very rebirth in the West led it to adopt a stance that was, consciously or unconsciously, opposed to religious and moral values. Subsequently, scientists claim to have adopted the apparently neutral and value-free attitude. But how value-free has this attitude been? Leaving aside some of the deliberate efforts aimed at using science as a tool to support atheistic, materialistic, and agnostic tendencies, considerable harm has also been on man's peace and security. No doubt, science and technology has rendered great services to man in raising his standard of living, and they have, above all, served the needs of satisfying man's quest for knowledge. There can be no two opinions on this issue, yet the absence of proper values to direct its development has led, among other things, to unprecedented arms race, producing enough arsenals to annihilate man's own existence. This is underscored by the fact that funds being spent on destructive capability by the major world powers are several times greater than those required for solving man's food, health, and educational problems. All this should compel us to pause for a moment, reach our consciousness, and decide to do something in earnest to check our progress in directions that may ultimately destroy our progress. This brings us to the point of adopting a radically new and different approach, such as of the first two approaches alluded to in the opening of this program. The search for this approach has become all the more necessary to the Muslim world, which finds itself sandwiched between the need of rapid progress in science and technology with a view of harnessing these for the basic needs of the teeming millions, on the other hand, and the desirability of preserving the high ideals of its culture, social, and environmental systems on the other. A look at the neutrality of science and technology. Contrary to the general claim that science is absolutely value-free or neutral in respect to all moral, social, and other systems valued directly or indirectly projected by science and technology has affected the social and moral structure of society more than any other phenomena in recent history. The well known example of the theory of evolution may be cited. In addition to the fact that mere opinions are projected on the origin of man, beyond the limits of actual observation and experiment, the concept of struggle for survival was advocated without regard to the higher social feelings characteristic of man. The results were disastrous. Not only was damage caused to established institutions, but the concepts of struggle for survival and survival of the fittest unjustifiably penetrated into fields of economics, trade, international relations, and sociology. And all this was based largely on conjecture and free interpretations without any conclusive proof of values so projected. This brings us to another important aspect of the issue, insofar as views and beliefs based on science are concerned. It is unfortunate that very often theories and values are projected that are not yet proved and that are later advocated after new findings. For instance, the atom was once considered indivisible. The concept later stood as badly scattered as the atom itself. Likewise, the concept of conservation of mass was once a fundamental law. It is not even a theory now. We were once told that a certain quality of butter or animal fat taken daily was essential for our health. But the effects of cholesterol accumulation have considerably reduced the importance of fats. This goes on to prove some findings of science are a transient nature and subject to frequent revisions. This is in contrast to the assertions of religion, especially Islam. The truth revealed by Islam 1400 years ago has not transcended hypothesis in it. All that it has been revealed is final as guidance to man. Hence, it is not at all wise to be influenced by the values and opinions, not fully proven facts emerging from science, especially when these are in contradiction to the teaching of Islam. Here, an important question arises. What if Islamic teachings involve verses that are against a fact proved by science, as has happened with many biblical statements? The answer to this question brings us to the standing miracle of the Quran. It was revealed 1400 years ago, yet all the scientific research carried out to date has not contradicted a single verse of the Quran, despite the fact that a large number of verses in the Quran describe or revealed scientific phenomena and facts, some of which were not even known or readily conceivable at the time of the revelation of the Quran. Most scientific research has, in fact, verified the truth of the scientific references in the Quranic revelation and even in the Hadith of the Prophet Muhammad. Scholars like Maurice Bucali have dealt with this subject in some detail. The following is an excerpt from his book, The Bible, the Quran, and Science. The relationship between the Quran and science a surprise, especially when it turns out to be one of harmony and not of discourse. The confrontation between a religious book and the secular ideas provided by science is perhaps, in the eyes of many people today, something of a paradox. The majority of today's scientists, with a little number of exceptions, of course, are indeed bound up in materialist theories and have only indifference or contempt for religious questions which they often consider to be founded on legend. In the West, moreover, when science and religion are discussed, people are quite willing to mention Judaism and Christianity among the religions referred to, but they hardly ever think of Islam. So many false judgments based on inaccurate ideas have indeed been made about it, that today it is very difficult to form an exact notion of the reality of Islam. The relationship between religions and science have not always been the same in any one place or time. It is a fact that there is no writing belonging to a monotheistic religion that condemns science. The practice, however, it must be admitted that scientists have had great difficulty with the religious authorities of certain creeds. For many centuries in the Christian world, scientific development was opposed by the authorities in question on their own initiative and without reference to authentic scriptures. We already know the measures taken against those who sought to enlarge science, measures which often made scientists go into exile to avoid being burnt at the stake, unless they recanted, changed their attitude, and begged for pardon. In the case of Galileo, is always cited in this context. He was tried for having accepted the discoveries made by Copernicus of the rotation of the Earth. Galileo was condemned as a result of a mistaken interpretation of the Bible, since not a single scripture could reasonably be brought against him. It may be pointed out that Islam is not against the proven facts and explanations of science at all. The Quran repeatedly invites humanity to study nature and its laws. However, science and scientists would do well to restrict their conclusions to proven facts only. The trouble starts when scientists and their protagonists go beyond the limits of the actually observed and proven facts and indulge in subjective interpretations that have implications for social and moral phenomena. For example, using kinetic theory to support determinism, or using quantum mechanics to substantiate the concept of free will. It is precisely here that the need for the Islamization of science becomes imperative. It is very often claimed that science does not go beyond what is observed or proved, but the facts are otherwise. In addition to the examples cited, it is interesting to note how much transgression exists even in purely scientific matters and what profound influence, although adverse, they have on progress of science. The well known example of suppression of work on the wave nature of light for nearly a century has a result of a prestige of the compulsory theory of Newton may be cited. Even today, it is often difficult to project scientific work that is contrary to certain opinions or the belief of some influential scientists, but it is much easier if it has the support of prestigious authors. The crisis of science and technology in relation to the Muslim world. Apart from the grave issues discussed earlier, the immediate apparent crisis of science and technology in the Muslim world is its present lag behind more advanced countries. The answer to this immense question lies in the hard and devoted work, careful planning, and viable joint ventures, as was precisely spelled out in the recently held International Conference of Science in Islamic Policy and the Fourth Summit Conference of the Organization of Islamic Conference in Casablanca in 1984. However, this effort is well near impossible without first resolving a crisis of an equally serious nature that prevails on the ideological front, which was acknowledged in the statement on the scientific knowledge seen from an Islamic perspective, issued at the Conference of Science in Islamic Policy. The most serious problem here is the one that concerns education of Muslim countries in general and scientific education in particular. The current syllabi, which were brought in by the colonial powers, are all based on the vision of knowledge and truth as evolved and practiced in the West. Their approach is moral, social, and historical issues in general and scientific subjects in particular based on the confrontation between Western religion and science results in the production of graduates either almost completely molded into the same Western framework or having a bifurcated mind divided against itself, a part holding the modern vision as true and predominant, and a part containing Islamic values mostly as a matter of personal belief. Of these graduates, those who then obtain higher education in the West and later assume important educational and other responsibilities in their countries usually get further instilled with the same philosophy of confrontation. The result of this situation is that the Muslim world, already lagging behind in the field of science and technology, is unable to integrate its thinking with modern science and technology. It is helpless in trying to rectify the errors being committed in the interpretation and application of science and technology in the contemporary world. In most Muslim countries, the traditional Islamic educational system exists mostly as a private organization alongside modern education. The dilemma is that, on the one hand, the man educated in the modern system lacks a correct perspective of history and ideology, and on the other hand, the man produced by the traditional system acutely lacks knowledge of modern science. This produces two classes of people in the Muslim world, insofar as their overall approaches to life and modern realities are concerned, living together in the same society but not comprehending each other's values. The main problem with modern education is that either it is completely lacks Islamic instruction or religious education is included as just one more subject, while all the other subjects are still taught with their one sided Western interpretation based on confrontation with religion. The inclusion of Islamic instruction in this way does not really serve the purpose, and the result in compartmentalization of the vision of the person so educated into a general outlook and a personal belief. There is thus a persistent dichotomy in thought and belief which influences not only our daily actions but prevents us from devoting ourselves wholeheartedly to any particular activity. Islamic view on science and technology. One result of Islamic belief and practice was the great advance of science in the period immediately following the Hijrah, i.e., from the ninth to the 12th century. Islam stresses the unity of all knowledge and is used for recognition of Allah and the benefits of mankind. However, Islam's stand on science is not an isolated phenomenon. Rather, it is one of the elements in the overall system of Islam, which teaches total submission to the will of Allah, mobilization of man's energies and resources for the welfare of the Muslim Ummah and man at large, and the inculcation of a collective spirit that will channel what is constructive in man. In the words of Allama Iqbal, Islam has furnished those basic emotions and faculties which gradually unify scattered individuals and groups and finally transform them into a well defined people, possessing a moral consciousness of their own. Of course, man has been given certain capabilities that enable him to subjugate most of the things around him and put them to his use. Whether it be a good and noble use or a bad, destructive, and ignoble one, herein lies the basic problem of today, namely, how to induce men to use their faculties in essentially noble, constructive, and useful directions. It may perhaps be easy to motivate isolated individuals to do what is right, but the real test is to motivate the masses and keep them on the path of righteousness. Islamic thought and ideology provides us with such motivation, which finds clear interpretation in the power of congregational worship and dawah. Some priority actions towards a solution. There is no denying the fact that Muslim countries would have to make every effort to acquire adequate capacities in science and technology. The gap with the developed world is very wide. The task is uphill, and there is no way out except through hard work and concerted, dedicated effort. The major objective of this Islamization and reinterpretation should be to produce graduates and scientists who do not have two compartments in their minds, one for contemporary knowledge and one for personal belief. The educated person should have one personality and should be able to visualize the unity of knowledge as maintained in Islam. The Islamization of knowledge will put an end to the schizophrenic compartmentalization of human minds, which has infected not only the minds of the Muslim educated in the modern systems, but also the Western mind ever since the confrontation of science and the church. The end product should be an integrated, highly motivated person, provided that the application of Islamic principles and injunction is fully and practically implemented, with due regard to the balance between the spiritual and the mundane. Priority actions to be taken for the development of scientific and technological capacity in accordance with the Ummah plan may then be identified as follows. Reinterpretation of moral and social implication of science in accordance with Islamic teachings so that no dichotomy exists between scientific overtones and Islamic belief. Teaching of the compulsory subjects oriented towards a dynamic Islamic way of life and the Sunnah of the Prophet at all educational levels from primary schools to universities. The Islamization of the approach of various subjects in general and scientific subjects in particular. And lastly, the inculcation of a true Islamic spirit by example that is aimed at the utilization of science and technology for the good of mankind. To sum up, the objective will be achieved by projecting a proper philosophy of knowledge and science and reinterpreting the moral and social implications of science and technology in their proper perspective. The result will be a unified whole in which faith, devoted religious observance, practical morality, and science and technology with economic growth will find all their proper places in that order. Here is Quranic support for the assertions. In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. This is the book. In it is guidance sure, without doubt, to those who fear God. It continues, who believe in the unseen, are steadfast in prayer, and spend out of what we have provided for them, and who believe in the revelation sent to thee and sent before thou time, and in their heart have the assurance of the hereafter. They are on true guidance with their Lord, and it is these who will prosper. The process that we have shown in this program will be slow, but sure. While some people may feel impatient, we must not forget or be forgetful of the Quranic admonition. Only when the inner self has been properly cultivated will outward changes be lasting and effective.